While I was watching TV, my husband stormed in, his face darkening with rage after my mother-in-law whispered something to him. Without warning, he shouted, "Why are you wasting time?" and smashed the TV, my father's treasured gift, on my head. Blood streamed down as I pleaded for help, but he showed no mercy. Dragging me by my hair, he hurled me out of the house, leaving me trembling in the cold. Shaking and desperate, I called my brother, Daniel. When he arrived, the nightmare only deepened. What followed was more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. My name is Harper Collins, and this is the story I never thought I'd live to tell, a journey through love, betrayal, and finding strength amidst unimaginable pain. 3 years ago, if someone had told me I'd be recounting this, I wouldn't have believed them. Life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? It all began when I met Jonathan Carter. At 26, I was living in Seattle, working as a graphic designer. My life was simple, steady, until Jonathan walked in. He was a 30-year-old banker, effortlessly charming and attentive, making me feel like the most important person in the world. Our whirlwind romance was filled with candlelit dinners, waterfront walks, and long conversations about our dreams. 6 months later, when he proposed, I said yes without hesitation. Friends called us the perfect couple, and I believed them, but perfection is often an illusion. After the wedding, we moved into a beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood. It felt like a dream come true. I poured myself into building our life together, cooking Jonathan's favorite meals and making our home warm and inviting. He worked long hours, and though I missed him, I told myself it was for our future. The cracks began to show when his mother, Patricia, moved in a few months after the wedding. Officially, she was there to help out, but her presence quickly revealed itself as controlling. A retired schoolteacher in her late 50s, Patricia carried an air of authority. She criticized everything, how I managed the house, dressed, and even cooked. Despite my efforts to get along, nothing pleased her. Worse, Jonathan always sided with her. "Mom's just trying to help," he'd say dismissively. One night, after a long day of chores, I settled on the sofa to watch TV. It was a small comfort, reminding me of my late father. The TV had been his gift to me, and it brought a sense of peace. That evening, Jonathan came home late, looking tired but greeting me with a brief smile. For a moment, I hoped for a calm night. Then Patricia appeared, whispering something in his ear. His expression shifted instantly, his eyes cold and angry. "Get up," he barked. "Go to the kitchen and make me a fresh meal." Confused, I replied, "Dinner is ready. I kept it warm for you." "I don't want that," he snapped. "I want something fresh, now." Exhausted, I hesitated. "Jonathan, I've been on my feet all day. Can't you?" Before I could finish, he erupted. "How dare you talk back to me?" He crossed the room in a fury, grabbing the TV, my father's TV. He lifted it above his head and slammed it down. The corner struck me, and pain exploded through my skull. I crumpled to the floor, blood trickling as shock paralyzed me. "Maybe this will teach you to obey me," he growled. Patricia stood nearby, arms crossed, a smug look on her face. "You don't deserve to live here if you can't respect us," she sneered. Bleeding and trembling, I begged for help, but they were merciless. Jonathan dragged me to the door and shoved me outside into the cold night. With nowhere else to go, I called Daniel. When he answered, I broke down. "Daniel, please, I need help." "I'm coming," he said firmly. "Where are you?" When he arrived, his face was a mix of worry and fury. He helped me into his car and drove straight to the hospital. "We're going to fix this," he said, gripping the wheel tightly. "He's not getting away with this." As the doctor tended to my wounds, a flicker of hope emerged. I didn't have to endure this anymore. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would fight for myself, no matter the cost. I hesitated, unsure where to begin, but I knew I had to tell Daniel everything. Taking a deep breath, I started from the beginning, recounting every instance of Patricia's interference, Jonathan's growing coldness, and my desperate attempts to please them, hoping things would improve. Finally, I described the horrifying moment when Jonathan smashed the TV on my head. Daniel listened intently, his fists clenched and jaw tight. By the time I finished, he was seething. "He's a monster," Daniel said, his voice low and full of rage. "And his mother is no better. Harper, you can't go back there, ever." "I know," I whispered, tears streaming down my face, "but what can I do? They've made it clear I don't belong there. I don't even have my belongings." "Forget your things," Daniel said firmly. "What matters is your safety. We'll figure the rest out. But first, we're going to make sure they pay for what they've done to you." I nodded. feeling a mixture of fear and relief. For the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't alone. Daniel was my rock, and I knew he wouldn't let me face this battle on my own. Over the next few days, I stayed with Daniel, trying to recover both physically and emotionally. He helped me file for divorce, a daunting but liberating process. Cutting ties with Jonathan felt like reclaiming a part of myself I had lost. Yet, as freeing as it wasn't enough. Anger and humiliation burned inside me. I wanted justice. One evening, as I sat in Daniel's living room, I said, I want to do more than just leave him. I want to expose him for what he really is. Daniel's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. What do you mean? I mean he's not the man he pretends to be, I said, my voice trembling but resolute. I've always had this feeling he's hiding something, the late hours, the unexplained phone calls. It doesn't add up. Daniel nodded slowly. You might be right. If he's hiding something, we'll find it. Let's dig deeper. That's when we decided to hire a private investigator. Daniel found Jack Lewis, a seasoned professional with a reputation for uncovering the truth. When we met with Jack, I explained my suspicions about Jonathan's activities at the bank. Jack listened carefully, took detailed notes, and promised to begin investigating immediately. The waiting was agonizing. Every day, I wondered what Jack would uncover. Part of me worried I was overreacting, but another part, the part that had endured Jonathan's lies, knew there was something dark beneath the surface. 2 weeks later, Jack called. I've found something, he said. Can we meet in person? My heart pounded as Daniel and I drove to Jack's office. When we arrived, Jack laid out the evidence he had gathered. The truth was worse than I had imagined. Jonathan wasn't just controlling, he was a criminal. He had been embezzling money from the bank, laundering it through fake accounts, and funneling it into offshore holdings. Jack presented documents, account statements, and surveillance photos. It was undeniable. I stared at the evidence, my mind reeling. I knew he was hiding something, I said softly. This is huge, Daniel said, his voice filled with determination. We're taking this to the authorities. Jack nodded. You should, but be careful. People like Jonathan don't react well when they're cornered. A chill ran down my spine, but I knew Jack was right. Jonathan was dangerous, and this was no longer just about me. His actions had hurt others, and I couldn't let him continue. The next day, Daniel and I went to the police with Jack's evidence. Detective Rebecca Hayes, the officer assigned to the case, listened carefully as we presented everything. This is solid, she said, flipping through the files. We'll start an investigation immediately. Leaving the station, I felt a mix of fear, relief, and empowerment. For so long, I had felt trapped, helpless. Now, I was fighting back, and for the first time in a long time, I believed I could win. The days after meeting Detective Hayes were a blur of nervous energy. The police took over the investigation, and I anxiously awaited updates. Jack's words echoed in my mind. Jonathan is dangerous. I tried to stay busy, throwing myself into anything that could distract me. Daniel, as always, was my rock, offering constant support, but even his reassurances couldn't fully quell my fears. I knew that once Jonathan discovered the investigation, there would be no turning back. About a week later, Detective Hayes called us in. When we arrived, she gestured for us to sit. We've made significant progress, she said, opening a folder on her desk. Thanks to the evidence your investigator provided, we've confirmed Jonathan is involved in a large-scale money laundering operation. He's been embezzling funds for over 2 years, using shell companies to cover his tracks. The scope of his crimes is massive. Hearing it spelled out left me breathless. What happens now? I asked, my voice shaky. We've built a strong case against him, Detective Hayes replied. We're monitoring his movements and preparing to make an arrest. But you need to be careful. Once he realizes the net is closing, he might try to contact you, or worse. I nodded, gripping the edge of my chair. I won't let him get to me, I said, though deep down, I was terrified. As we left the station, Daniel turned to me. You're handling this incredibly well, Harper. For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of pride. I was fighting back, and I wasn't going to stop until justice was served. The weight of everything settled on me as I sat in Daniel's living room, staring out the window. My thoughts drifted back to the beginning, when Jonathan had held my hand, promised me happiness, and made me believe in a future together. How could the same man who once vowed to love and protect me turn into someone who destroyed everything we had, smashed a TV over my head, and embezzled millions? The betrayal was unfathomable, but instead of breaking me, it steeled my resolve. He had taken enough. Now, He had to face the consequences. The days leading to Jonathan's arrest were tense. I couldn't stop imagining how he would react. Would he lash out or play innocent? A part of me dreaded the confrontation, but a stronger part, one I barely recognized, wanted to see him fall. When Detective Hayes called to inform me that Jonathan had been taken into custody, I felt a rush of emotions. He didn't resist, she said, but he's claiming innocence, saying it's all a misunderstanding. Of course he is, I replied bitterly. It was so like Jonathan to paint himself as the victim. Still, knowing he was behind bars, even temporarily, gave me a sense of safety I hadn't felt in months. Preparing for the trial was grueling. Memories of Jonathan haunted me, his disdainful glares, the nights I cried myself to sleep, and the moment he threw me out, bleeding and broken. But those memories, as painful as they were, strengthened me. I was determined to stand up, not just for myself, but for anyone who had ever felt powerless. The day of the trial came quickly. The courtroom, with its high ceilings and somber atmosphere, was intimidating. I sat next to Daniel, clutching his hand as Jonathan was brought in. He looked calm, even smug, as if he believed he could manipulate his way out of this. But as the prosecution laid out the evidence, documents, surveillance photos, and Jack's testimony, his composure faltered. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand on shaky legs, but spoke with a steady heart. I recounted everything, the abuse, the lies, and the night he smashed the TV over my head. My voice wavered at times, but I didn't stop. I refused to let him silence me again. Jonathan's defense tried to paint me as a bitter ex-wife, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. By the end of the trial, it was clear to everyone in the courtroom that he was guilty. The judge's verdict was swift. Jonathan was convicted on multiple counts of embezzlement, money laundering, and fraud. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. As the gavel struck, a wave of relief washed over me. Jonathan couldn't hurt me anymore. Walking out of the courthouse with Daniel, the sun shone brightly, but I still felt the weight of everything sinking in. "You did it, Harper," Daniel said, his voice full of pride. "You stood up to him." I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Moving forward wasn't easy. The scars, both physical and emotional, remained, and there were nights when I woke up reliving his violence. But each day, I reminded myself of my strength. I had survived. Reclaiming my independence became a crucial part of my healing. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in downtown Seattle. It wasn't much, but it was mine, a space free from Jonathan's shadow. Work became another refuge. Pouring myself into design projects helped rebuild my confidence. My boss, always supportive, gave me opportunities to grow, and with each success, I proved to myself that I was capable. Through it all, Daniel remained by my side, my constant source of strength. Whether he was bringing groceries or simply sitting with me, his presence reminded me that I wasn't alone. One day, I came across a photo from my wedding. In it, Jonathan smiled at me, his arm wrapped around my waist. I stared at it, trying to reconcile the man in the photo with the monster he became. Finally, I tore it in half and threw it away. It felt symbolic, like I was finally letting go of the version of him I had once loved. Jonathan's sentencing sent shockwaves through the community. His crimes made headlines, and the bank issued a public apology for its oversight. Patricia, his mother, moved away, likely out of embarrassment. Part of me wanted to confront her, but I realized it wasn't worth my energy. My focus was better spent on myself and my future. One evening, Daniel and I went out to celebrate at a small Italian restaurant. As we clinked glasses, he raised a toast. "To your freedom." "To my freedom," I echoed, smiling, a genuine smile from a place of peace. Looking back now, I see how far I've come. What happened to me was horrific, but it didn't break me. It taught me that I deserve better, that I have a voice, and that no matter how dark things seem, there's always a way out. Jonathan underestimated me. He underestimated my strength. Now, as I look ahead, I know one thing for certain: I'm free to live, to dream, and to build a life on my own terms. That, to me, is the greatest victory of all.